Hi everyone, this is Mary Michon at Bensell Greenhouse in Toledo, Ohio, and today we're talking about insects. Okay, so how do you search for bugs? How do you notice that you actually have them? We are constantly looking and walking, turning the undersides of leaves over. I have an actual magnifying glass. This is actually a jewelry, a magnifying eyepiece, but there are ones out there for plants, but you can use this if you want to get really technical on it. But we're always looking for different types of bugs, and I kind of take a look at different leaf structures, and I know which plants are prone to bugs. So if you're a houseplant person, you probably know which of your plants in your house tend to be more prone for insects than others. And so I've pulled a couple different plants. We've got a white bird of paradise, we've got a croton, and we've got a ficus altissima. White birds of paradise, green, shiny green leaves, very easy to see a white mealy or white fly on there. Croton's not as easy because they're colorful and they're more prone for spider mites. So they tend to be a little bit harder to detect. And then you have the nice shiny Alamatissima leaf, and it's a little furry on the underside. So the reason why I'm pointing all of these guys out is because each one of those will have bugs in different ways. So I tend to look on the front side, and then I look at the back side, and I follow these plants down. I look at the little crooks. I look down like this white bird of paradise. I look down into the nooks and crannies. And then I follow the plant down to where it attaches itself to the stem of the plant. And you look down into the soil as well. So I'm looking at them all of the time, and I really want to examine the backside of the leaves. This is a Streptocarpella. These guys about 3 months ago were covered in mealy. And we actually did a treatment on them as well as a soapy water mix, and they are looking beautiful. There's a couple, let's see, I pulled one leaf off. There's a last leaf remnant of what this guy looked at before when it had mealy, and look at the nice green growth now after we've treated it. Here's a Dieffenbachia leaf, and one of the things that I noticed as I was walking past this guy is there's a little bit of discoloration along the edge of the leaf and even down into the veining. There's a little bit of browning on here, which I'm assuming might be lack of humidity, but I am also looking at this leaf. And as you walk past your plants and you see them day in and day out, you're going to start noticing all these little idiosyncrasies about the plants. But this one is a really good example of spider mite. And spider mite, like I said, can be very difficult. So you want to really kind of figure out which plants are more prone to it. But I can kind of see the little tiny mites down in here prior to any webbing. So that's what's really crucial. Sometimes when you see the webbing, it's almost too late for the plant. But we will talk in a minute here about what to do about spider mites as well. But take a look at your leaves. Look for little mottling, yellow discoloration. There's a big difference between overwatering yellowing and bug yellowing. So those are something to think about as well. And then the other last plant that I have here is a fern. And these guys grow underneath our benches, so we're constantly trying to remove the plants underneath our benches. But this one is quiet, silent underneath. And here we have all the shell casings of whitefly. So we see that there was a little bit of a whitefly problem on these plants. And the little casings that they emerge from are still on the underside of the fern. This one also is very telltale because you can see as the petals of the frond are attached to the stem here, there's a lot of yellowing in there. And that's another telltale sign that there are bugs on this plant sucking the chlorophyll from the leaves. So one of the things to remember is when you're looking at your plants, just don't walk past them and look at the top side of the leaves. You want to look at the underside of the leaves, and you want to look down into all of your nooks and crannies. When I identify bugs in the greenhouse, I determine how bad the infestation is, and then I decide what I want to do to treat the bugs. And I usually try to start with hand manipulation, just a soapy water mix first and foremost, just to see, especially on big broad leaves like this. You can just take some warm soapy water in some rags. I stabilize the bottom leaf like this underneath, and then I take the top and we just do, even the stems, we just do a little bit of a manipulation, a little bit of pressure, and that can tend to squash the bugs and take away spider mite webbing if you can do that. And we just kind of wash all the leaves top and bottom. That's one simple way of doing it. It really does work on all of your leaves, and it will get a few of the bugs away. Will it get everything? Maybe not, but it's something that you want to do maybe once a week, and especially during the time of year when your houses are closed up, your windows are closed up. This is a nice way to clean the dust off of your plants as well. You don't want to coat them with soap. That's the biggest thing. So just a couple squirts of dish soap and some water. If you're concerned about it, you can always take these guys into the shower and rinse them off. One thing I really am cautious about is the furry leaves, like an African violet or this streptocarpella. We tend to only do the underside that's shiny. I don't like to do a lot of soapy water on leaves that tend to be kind of furry. But it would work for this Elegamentissima, and it really actually helps to clean the leaves up. I think it's nice when you're doing these things too, because you're up close and personal to your plants. You tend to notice things a little bit more. So a very simple soap and water type of action is always a good first start, okay? And then the next thing would be like possibly a systemic. And a systemic insecticide is something that you add to the soil, you water it in, and the plant absorbs that, pulls it out into the stems, into the leaves, and when the insect bites into it, it will kill them. Here's the problem. So systemics I love, they're really important, and sometimes they get you through the winter or the summer months, if you're busy outside or busy doing things. The one thing I want you to pay attention to though, so I have a systemic here, and I'm going to put it according to the directions on this pod, and I have very loose soil here. Systemics will not work unless they're built into or moved into the soil. When you water them in, the plant takes them up. It takes about 5 to 7 days for that plant to move that insecticide up through its vascular system where the bugs may be. So you have to think about that. In that 1 week's time, your bugs could be multiplying before the insecticide or the systemic starts to work. So maybe a quick manipulation on the leaves to remove some of the bugs, then a systemic in the soil. So this is nice and loose, and it's readily watered in, as opposed to this plant that's been in the pot for a while. The soil is very hard, and when I try to put a systemic on this, it's going to sit and float on the top of the pot. It may not move in as well. So think about that. Maybe you need to repot your plant first, get it up out of the soil, trim the root system, put fresh loose soil in, then apply your systemic. And again, remember, it can take up to a week before that plant gets that into all of its vascular system. The other thing would be a spray. I didn't bring any sprays up here at this time, but a lot of people are using sprays in their house, like something like a neem oil. Sprays can be very, very effective. They can be instantly killing your plants, but you have to be really careful. You're spraying a chemical inside your house. You might be breathing that in. You have to read the instructions. Do you need to wear gloves? Is that liquid that you're using, is it dripping down on the floor where animals or children can get into it? Can you take it to an area where you spray it and isolate it? That would be something that's important. The beauty of sprays, though, is if you do spray down, it can sometimes run down into the nooks and crannies of your plant, but you have to realize that it could be overbearing and it may burn in some areas. So you have to know how to spray. So neem oil to me is very effective when you have an infestation, and a lot of times it's used as a preventative. It's very smelly, and it can cause skin irritation if you're not wearing gloves. There are some other products out there. I did a little bit of research, and there's a couple of places out there. There's a lot of organic sprays. Insecticidal soaps are very, very good, but they also sometimes with an infestation, you actually, if you're using insecticidal soap, you also have to use some sort of hand manipulation to really get those bugs out. So think about whether these insecticides are suffocating the insect, they're affecting their nervous system, they're affecting their reproductive system. If that is the case, the suffocation will be an instantaneous type of thing, but know your bugs. For example, mealybugs, as they become adults, have a very waxy coating over the top of them, as well as scale. So when you're spraying something, then it just rolls off of them and they continue to reproduce. It has no bearing on them. But when scale are very young, almost minute, where you don't see them, or mealy are very, very tiny, that's when it's good to spray them down with a liquid, or to continue to treat them. That's why when you do a bug spray or a bug treatment of any sort, you don't do it once. You do it 3 times at a minimum. So I like to spread my bug treatments out once every week and a half, and then notice the temperatures where your plants are. When they're in the 70s, your bugs are replicating very quickly. When you're down lower temperatures, that slows down their reproductive cycle, and you have a better chance of getting bugs under control. So think about the temperature in your house, whether the wind is blowing through the windows if it's summertime, or the house is sealed up in the heat of the summer for air conditioning, or cold of the winter with drying temperatures when the heat starts running in your house. And one of the final things that I always tell people to do, especially if you're a plant collector, you have a lot of plants in one area, is to get a fan. Turn your fan on your plants. You can get little clamp-on fans, little tiny ones. And actually, this is just an oscillating fan where it can be set down underneath, and it will rotate, and it will keep your plant leaves moving. Bugs hate movement. And that's why sometimes we put plants outdoors or close to doors here in the greenhouse, because the air movement stops the bugs from settling and living on your plants. So hopefully we've given you a few good tips to get some bugs under control, or to monitor your bugs so you don't have a real serious problem coming up now in January and February, or possibly as you open your windows up in the spring and summer and bugs are flying into the house. Hopefully this helps everyone. Thanks for watching.